chocolate fig crust. Now, I don't have to mold that up for you. You know exactly how we did that before. And what I want to do is to get this mix on, because this is really different. To begin with, then, the same basic gelatin structure goes into the bottom, and just pour that in. And then the 3/4 of a cup of soft brown sugar. And, you know, it's just the same as white sugar, come on. But they add a little molasses back in it to color it. Very sweet, and you may even, when you actually taste this, want to get the sweetness down a little bit. Okay, now here instead of the vanilla, this is a marvelous little collection. I've got powdered ginger, 1/2 teaspoonful each. Powdered ginger, ground cloves, and ground cinnamon. And that, when you put those together, they complement each other in a wonderful way, because it spices the mix. So just pop that in. And let me see, what else have I got to put in here? Oh, and the cottage cheese. With the cottage cheese, you just simply pour a little bit of that in, like that, about sort of 1 cupful, and then start to whiz it up. I always put the lid on just in case. You know, I've wound up with this stuff all over the place. The only important thing to remember with adding this is just a little at a time, and wait. Make sure that you've got the whirlpool, the sort of Alfred Hitchcock look in the middle. If that goes away, you've got to stop before adding the next bit. What that's doing, it's showing you, see, it's all gone. Creature from 20,000 fathoms. Up it comes. And then just keep pouring it in. Okay, so there is 2 cups of cottage cheese. That's the low-fat cottage cheese and small cone. All right. We'll just let that keep on doing its thing over there and show you what happens next, because this is the vegetable. And the vegetable here is the butternut squash. Didn't waste too much that time. And then place the blade on the top, press down, and it isn't too hard as squash. If you haven't tried this, by the way, just to bake it and eat it as a squash is just wonderful. But take about 2 pounds in weight altogether you'll need to scoop out for the amount that you'll need here. Place it, I often place it just seeds and all, just on a plate like that, but you can scrape the seeds off before you start. Into an oven, 350 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 180 degrees centigrade. Give it 40 minutes, takes just about 40 minutes. And then it comes out of the bottom. Quite delightful. See what's happening, you get 3. And all you do is just look at that. When it's beautifully done, it's so soft and tender that you can take a scoop, like you just scoop it out. It's so moist, and it has such a fine, delicious flavor to it as well. So all you then need is something like this. It's rather like a large garlic press. This is indispensable for whipped potatoes and this sort of thing. Fill up that cupful, and look, it squeezes through. It's called a ricer, and it squeezes all through, and you've got, it's nice and smooth, but yet there's just a little bit of mouth texture to that as well. So, when this is now whizzed up, and it takes about that time, 4 or 5 minutes, you know, you can stop it, open it up, and just look at this. Look, just imagine what that tastes like with that cottage cheese. See how that has gone down. It is creamy and soft and spiced, and the cinnamon is there, and the ginger is there, and it's all just marvelous. Now, you notice that I didn't whiz up the vegetable in it, because I wanted a little bit of texture. You see on the top of that spoon there, there's a bit of texture in this, and I want that texture in the same way as I had texture in the previous one. Okay, done. Now, all I have to do is to get the spoon back out of the sink and add 1 cup of, yes, 1 cup of plain non-fat yogurt right at the end. Just stir that in. That gives a little bit of a tart bite to it, gives you the volume that you require for the, and just a little bit of extra. There's nothing, actually there should always be in all mixes, I feel, just a little bit extra, especially if there's kids in the family. Mommy, want to lick the bowl? There you are, darling. See? Just enough for lick the bowl. All right. Walk carefully. The only thing that can ruin it now is an earthquake. and into the fridge. 2 hours, and it should be set up so that instead of serving it, you can bounce it into your guest. It's not that. You might like to experimentally drop down just one envelope of gelatin just to be on the safe side. But it depends how hot it is when you serve these things. I think this is just fine. Yes. Okay. Just a knife, heat it up just a little bit first of all for serving. This is the kind of shape and size, just like the one we did before, that you can get with the numbers that I've got. A plate, and I'll tell you, I am beginning to enjoy the baking and dessert process. Look at that, will you? Look at that, nice. All right. Now, if you get if you get an orange, and you get that there are little peeling devices which you can actually score the outside of an orange, very thin slices, like these here. And what I did is put these into a pot with a little water and just bring it to the boil, and then turn the water off, throw the water away. And that gives me a piece of orange zest, which is really remarkable because it's kind of, it's a bright note, but at the same time it's not overpowering, which it could be if you left it without blanching it first. And you just throw little curly bits of that onto the plate. Isn't that great? You might have seen that in some famous restaurants nowadays. They're always throwing little curly bits of things all over the place. Used to happen by mistake. Now it happens by design. All right, there it is. There's it is. Let's have a look and see about the numbers. Stands up nicely. You see it's nice and tall. If you compare this then, because of that mold, which is only 7 inches across, you see how tall it stands on the plate, and yet it's fairly short. This one is longer, but it's smaller. And so I think you have a sense of, getting a good plateful. Do you? Good. All right. This is what happens to the numbers. This is compared to the classic, which is a kind of pumpkin cheesecake, if you like. And this one here, I think, could be just sensational at Thanksgiving. Think of it. All right. 249 calories, under the 300, down from 366. But look at the fat. From 27 grams of fat altogether, that's down to 4. And from 16 grams of saturated fat, which I really don't like, that's down to 1. That's just 1 out of the 4. Then that means percentage of calories from fat, which was 65%, now is 13. And isn't that lovely to think that a thing like that can just be 13%? Boy. Cholesterol down to only 10. Sodium at 252, which is fine for dessert. And dietary fiber, a whopping 4. I've still got a piece of that orange in my mouth. That's nice to chew on. Okay. Now, actually, it reminds me of a fine cheese, doesn't it? With a sort of a crust on the outside of the cheese. See the crust there and how good that looks? Smooth, spicy, touch of orange there, crunch of the seeds from the fig. It is altogether very good. I tell you what, next Thanksgiving, I'm going to serve this for my family. In fact, I might serve it to them before Thanksgiving. Okay. Thank you so much for being with me. May God bless you and keep you and make all of your lovely efforts on behalf of people that you adore, come off like that does. Success. Isn't that nice? God bless. See you next time. Welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen. It's really 2 programs in 1. This is a series that appeals to your creative side. Food that is sumptuous stuff. How could that be? This is a program about people who want to eat healthy and reduce calories. Actually, it's about food with an aromatic quality that fills the nose. Oh, sure. But it's also about keeping my arteries clean by reducing fat. But it doesn't mean a thing if the food isn't rich and colorful. Maximize the flavor. Okay, but I must have healthy food that I can cook in minutes. I must minimize the risk. So welcome to Graham Care's Kitchen, where we get our heads together just for you. And welcome back once again. Now, this is that wonderful opportunity of us to get our heads together and see whether we can get something which is really going to minimize risk and get some flavor going. And this one is a sauce, actually. It's a great sauce, and it's actually somewhat like the great sauces that you can get from Europe and all over the world. But this one is important, you know, because it deals with a flavor that everybody loves. Now, let's see whether that's true. Do you love French onion soup? You know, that thing that is crusted with the cheese. Well, we'll clear the cheese off for the moment and just summon up that flavor once again. Okay, now that's a really popular flavor. That's important with something like this. Now, you see, here is a piece of food. It doesn't matter what it is, but that's a piece of food like that. Now, it's very important when you put a sauce over the top of a piece of food like that, that it doesn't actually fight the food that you're serving it with. And quite a few sauces do. So what I love to try and do in this dish is to bring a sauce around to get underneath the dish, to get up underneath the food and make something more of it, especially when I'm not using a lot of fat and a lot of salt and a lot of sugar, okay? So that's what I'm going to do today, create an onion sauce, marvelously carameled onion sauce, and then show you what to do when you've got, you know, Thanksgiving and a load of turkey afterwards, and a great dish to do with that. Lots of comfort. All right, come through. Right, I need to get on with this because, you see, the first thing that I would do in this case is to take just a little oil and put it into a hot pan and start the process going. Now, what I've done here, just to show you what it looks like, the oil that I use is a little olive oil. And by the way, that is different from the normal olive oil. This one has been deodorized, so you don't get that full, pungent, extra virgin olive oil thing, which I love and which, you know, gourmets all over the world just extol. But in this case, I just want something which is right down in terms of flavor for those of you who are not into that kind of thing. So this little charming little fellow here is sesame. That's toasted sesame oil. And what I do is I put in about 1/16th part of toasted sesame oil. And now I know Trina's going to say to me, stir with a knife and stir up strife. It's one of those things in our family. And that then has that toasted sesame taste, and it's wonderful. Now, I'm just going to put a 1/4 teaspoonful of that. It's almost as if you're saying, like, why bother? Well, it's a signature item, and you can, because it's complexity. When you reduce fats, you have to come up with things that are genuinely tier upon tier upon tier of flavors and colors and textures, and it's wonderful. Okay, so we drop that down. Small sizzle as it, there we are, you can hear it? Good. As it hits the pan, and just stir it all around just to be able to get those onions just going fine. Now, there is a seed, a couple of seeds which can go wonderfully well in this. Now, here's a seed on this side. Those little seeds are called caraway seeds, and these are dill. Now, I wonder whether you can see the difference between the two. They are really quite different. They've got different functions that they play in flavor. But that little seed there is the dill seed. It's a wonderful seed, and of course it comes from dill, and it's dried, and they last forever, well, more or less. And here is a caraway seed. It sort of looks like a little tiny dried banana, right? And those go into this. I don't want to waste anything. But I take 1 teaspoonful each of that. Now, those put into the onions, they get underneath the sauce, and they come up through it, and the flavors are extraordinary. And the moment that you start to fry in those, and it hits the pan, experiment, get down close to it, it starts to come up and get you, okay? Onions are interesting things. I've just used an ordinary yellow onion, just so that everybody can do this. But here's a Walla Walla. By the time these come up, everybody goes crazy because this is in the state of Washington, the United States. And these are wonderful sweet onions. And just add that extra sweetness to this dish, which are great. But as I said, I've done this with a regular one. The Walla Walla, when it's dried, out of season, looks like that. And this one is a Texas 1015, which means on the 10th month, on the 15th day, they plant it. And that's a nice sweet onion as well. And there's a Maui and a Vidalia, which comes from Georgia. I've tried to find out whether in England, whether we have sweet onions, and apparently we don't. So I know I'm going to get 3,000 letters telling me, of course we do, old chap, you know. But anyway, send it in if you want to. Always interested in hearing. Okay, now, when that's frying, it fries for about 5 to 10 minutes. And I'm being sort of elastic about that. It depends how hot you do it. But on a medium-high heat, you can get some idea about how dark that can get down. See, that's before and that's after. So it gives you some idea about how dark it can be. All right, so that's doing there. That smell of the seeds are coming up brilliantly in that as well. To be able to get the texture off the bottom of the pan and into this dish is an interesting job. We do it with two things. One, which is a cup full here, that's a cup measure, of beef stock, and also a cup of red wine. Now, if you're not into the red wine thing, I use de-alkalized stuff just in case. But if you're not into that, you could double up on the beef stock. It'll show a difference, frankly, but I don't think it'll be a bad idea at all. So just if, you feel like that. And if you say, just the moment you got to the beef stock, I can't go with you because it's too complicated. Get a can of beef stock, get some thyme, peppercorns, and a few pieces of clove and a bay leaf and some parsley, and nice herbs, and put them in a little mesh ball if you like, or just chuck them straight into the saucepan. And just brew it up for about 10 minutes. It just makes all the difference in the world. It's a very quick way of doing stock, okay? And whoops, I normally pour in the red wine first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, 8 ounces, that's 1 cup, you see. Now, see the color of that? That's why the red wine is such a good idea, because the color mixes with a color which has now come off the bottom of the pan. Take all advantage of every residue, because that's where the flavors of the onion combined with the seeds together and have drawn out this wonderful flavor. So just get it all off the bottom. And here now is 1 cup of that beef stock with just that little extra herbal touch to it. And build the heat up underneath that and get that bubbling and nice and hot. Okay, good. Well, this is going well. Well, you see how simple it is? Very simple idea. Okay. This is the standard way that I thicken things. As you might know, this is the arrowroot deal. Arrowroot, in this case, has got about 1.5 to 2 tablespoons full of arrowroot. Normally, if you've got a cup, 8 ounces of fluid, you put 1 tablespoonful for 8 ounces, and that thickens it nicely. In this case, I put just a little bit more. I've got just a little bit more. I've got almost 2 tablespoons full of that mixture going together. Okay. Now, because this is straightforward starch, it means that the moment that it hits a hot pan, it immediately clenches up. So if you've got a real heat underneath that one that I have here at the moment, it's sort of brewing up nicely. If you will do that, what will actually take place is little, dumplings will form off the bottom of the pan. That's not what we want. So you move that off the pan base there and just stir it in. Now, you'll notice that this is the starch before it cooks. The starch before it cooks is that milkiness that it has to it. But now as it's absorbing, you can put it back onto the heat again. Yeah, and it's remarkable. I mean, just look at it. You see, it doesn't need to boil to thicken. It is just so soft. And when the milkiness goes out of it, the color comes into it. And look at the color that's in that. It's just delightful. Now, because it's so brilliant and because the arrowroot is so glossy, you could actually leave it just like that and just serve it. But I've got an idea that if you want a smooth sauce, if you don't want sort of all the bits of onion all over it, then what you can do is you simply slosh, well, I'll just show you a little bit of this. Just slosh a little of it into a blender, all right? And put the lid on the top and just give it at high speed, just run it for about, oh, I don't know, 30 seconds. I haven't really timed it to be sure. And then take a couple, in this case I've gone to the absolute apex of gastronomy, is a hot turkey sandwich. This is bread underneath and then, you know, the turkey on the top. All right. Now, in this case, you simply take a spoonful of it and dress whatever you're serving on the top, like so. And it's thick, but it isn't, you know, that thick. It doesn't mask in terms of flavor. It has a wonderful appearance. Tastes good too. And this one then, if you want to get it really thin, thank you, you then pour this. But look what happens. When you do it with this, it's a very nice, thick, glutinous kind of sauce, but it loses some of its sparkle, doesn't it? And because the sparkle comes from the lights hitting this with the arrowroot. But what you've actually done, you've taken the white of the onion and whizzed it into that and kind of, I think, lost it a little bit. I put a little parsley on the top of that if I was going to serve it like that, but I'm just really wanting to test the sauce itself, just the sauce. So there's the basic technique, simple one, isn't it? Just put it together and great dishes can be supported from underneath. Really, the interesting thing is that this can make a tremendous amount of difference when it comes to numbers. So I've never really sat down to a piece of turkey other than a sauce like that, but it's the sauce that I'm really getting at the present moment. Okay, get back to the taste of that in a moment. See, that is the glory of a sauce which comes under something and lifts it up. By the way, thanks for letting me know about screwing up the paper. I will draw on the other side later. All right, now, these are the numbers, and this is how it works. The first one here, 180 calories, in the Minimax one actually just gets to be 84. All right? And then we get to the fat, which is just one only gram of fat as against 13. Saturated fat is absolutely 0. And that gives me about a 10% of fat from calories, and that's really good. Cholesterol is down to 12, and in this case is 0, and then sodium is 20, and then just a couple of grams of fiber at the end. So that really works out very well indeed. So it's just a question of the taste, as it normally should be. Now, here the darkness is there, the quality is there. It's amazing how sweet that is. That is a sweet thing. And it rolls over the taste. It's got that slight smokiness which you get from sort of cooking for quite a while. And I can really taste the caraway seed in it. It's really good. That works well. Okay, so that is something that you could use for, I imagine you're into it already. Now, I'll show you a very interesting idea. When you've had Thanksgiving or Christmas or something like that, you've got a turkey left over and ham, all right, and mound of potatoes, and it's steaming hot and gorgeous. Come along. Oh, where's my glasses? Nearly lost my glasses for a moment. Okay, now here is the sauce. It's on the go from just a little while before. I took out such a lot of it, but I think just stay nice and cool or hot, and we'll deal with it. All right, now let's say that we've got the typical Thanksgiving turkey sliced into it, piece of ham on the side, and you know it's the day after and you're wondering what to do with the leftovers. Well, this is one of the things that you can get to. And let me show you first of all what it looks like in terms of meat size, because I know that not everybody has a pair of weighing scales. If you go to the deli, now I'm just simply taking us to the place that if it isn't Thanksgiving, Christmas, and you want to do this anyway, so go to the deli, and ask them to slice it real thin. I mean, so thin that you can read the other slice. You could drape it over a newspaper and read the newspaper through it. So it's that thin. So you can get 2 slices of ham and perhaps a whole slice of turkey. Is it going to see where I am? And another piece of turkey, and that would give me about 3.5 ounces of meat altogether. All right? So there's the portion. That's the portion size. Very thin slices. If you're doing it yourself at home, I've no doubt it could be thicker than that. So what you do is get a little bit of oil, just a tiny drop of oil. And if you've got cereal bowls normally contain about 8 ounces. So get a little bit of oil into the bottom there and measure it with a measuring cup. Just pour it into the top, make sure that it works. And then take a slice of ham and drape it in on the side until it sort of half covers the bottom. Then take the other, just a piece of turkey there, and fill up that side. Then you can just sort of chuck it in at will. There we go. It's a nice portion. I don't think, actually, I have a sense, I couldn't see the other side of the weighing scale, but I have a sense that it was just a little over. So I want to keep it to 3.5 ounces. All quite low fat and very lean ham. Okay, so there it is, over the top. Now, this is a russet potato, quite an ordinary one here. About 8 russet potatoes, gives you about 3.5 pounds. And can you time me for a moment? Anyone got a stopwatch? Ready? Go. Okay. I need to be timed. I'm not out for a world record. I'm out to make a point here about peeling potatoes. I was in the army once and had to do this sort of thing just because I was who I was. Matter of fact, what I did, I said to the sergeant on the line, you know, I said to him, "What's that?" He was holding a little yellow piece of material on the end of a sort of spoon. It was about to serve me with it. And he said, "Yours is not to reason why, yours is to eat up." And so I took it and I shaved a piece off it and sent it to the Ministry of Food, this is in England, and asked them for an analysis about what this was, because I was interested. And 2 weeks later, the commanding officer sent for me and said, "Did you send this to the Ministry of Food?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, for your information, it is Yorkshire pudding, and you have 2 weeks confined to barrack. March out." And so that was my first time of getting KP and having to do, you know, the work. How long did that take? Hey, 1 minute?
1 minute.
1 minute. Okay, now here's the point. It's 1 minute of personal KP labor. Do you want to do that? I don't know, but where you're coming from. But you can get powdered potato, and you can short-circuit all of that and get to it immediately. The only difficulty is that I find with powdered potato that it's kind of floury. For me, it isn't the same as fresh potato. So, 1 minute, you've got eight minutes to peel the potatoes as against sort of opening the package and going for it. So, it's your choice. Into warm water, 1/8 teaspoonful of salt, bring it to the boil, and cook it for just 10 minutes. Now, after 10 minutes, which is how long this has had, just strain them out through a colander, and then, I think I'm going crazy, then what you do is just pour it right back in again. Now, when they're completely dry, they've got enough moisture locked up in those potatoes. It's amazing, actually. Just how much there is. And for 10 minutes longer, you put it on a low heat and put a towel on the top, and they steam out. And so what was a waterlogged piece of potato is now perfectly cooked, and that has a sort of flouriness on the outside, you see? Now that is perfectly cooked potato. Believe it or not, chefs in London actually have to go through a test to see whether they're going to work in a famous hotel. They have to cook boiled potatoes and make them come out just perfectly like that. All right, so put that into a mixer and just run it slowly. And I've got here about half a cup of buttermilk. And you know, some potatoes are drier than others or wetter than others, and you're going to have to sort of work that through yourself. So then about 1/8 of a teaspoonful of additional salt onto the top, some freshly ground white pepper, which is really just black pepper with the overcoat knocked off it. But this way it doesn't look like it's, you know, somebody's mended the roof on the top. And just simply curl it round like so. And then this is an intriguing idea. This is a nutmeg shaver. because it's hard to grate nutmeg. And there are little shaves of nutmeg going down there. Not too much. You don't want it too nutmeggy, but just enough. But again, about a quarter of a teaspoonful would be fine. All right, so that is all whipped up and it starts to sort of combine together. Very low speed, all right? Good. And now, just take some of this. Now, this can be hot or, in this case, of course, it's cold. But you take a spoonful of it, and if you're doing it hot, then it's quite easy to do. Just simply dash it in on top there and smooth it out so that it comes not quite to the lip, all right? And then just move the little bits of the extraneous pieces of ham and turkey back from the outside. Then the way that I like to do this is to put, for a family, is to put foil on the top of it, stick it in the oven, and just heat it up, right? Then everybody gets it nice and hot. Put a plate on the top. This is the time when you pray. And just put a knife underneath, and it should all... I said this is the time you should pray. And it all comes out and looks absolutely marvelous, doesn't it? A nice mound of the meat over the top. And then with that spoon, where's the spoon again? You just make a depression on the top there so as to hold some of this. When it comes out, it's hot, it's gorgeous. Then take the sauce that you've made and simply pop the sauce over the top like that so that it runs like lava flows down the outside. And then a little bit of parsley rain down on top, all over. In fact, when you're doing dishes like that, just overdo it a little bit more. Throw a little parsley around the plate as well, and it looks great. Great. Good. All right, now you see, you remember that technique here? They are now on this low heat, steaming through. It's really hot, steaming towel. You could use it to shave afterwards. Just comfortable food. All right, now there is the dish. Let's see how this compares with the sort of thing that I did earlier on. It's that famous hot turkey sandwich. So there it is on the dish. Now, look at it for a start. It's glistening as it glistened before. It's got nice texture to it. Looks pleasant on the plate. This one is the standard with whipped potatoes on the side or bread underneath it and slices of turkey and that cream turkey sauce. Let's compare the numbers and show you just what this looks like. Okay, believe it or not, the thing that we have used so much in the past is 893 calories for that size there. And in our case, we've dropped that to 422, virtually cutting the calories in half. 22 grams of fat drops to 3 grams of fat. And then, of those 3 grams of fat, just 1 gram is saturated, which means that we've only got 6% of the calories that are actually coming from fat, which is really terrific, and especially around, Thanksgiving time, that sort of thing. Okay, cholesterol is down to 33, and then sodium at 7, and virtually, I don't have the numbers today for fiber. Well, that's because I had cereal for breakfast. So those are very good numbers. Now, all it really takes is to actually see what it looks like when you carve into it. And actually, as the family carve into it, they can eat it like a pie. You cut a wedge of it, and there's the hot steaming, and the ham, that's slight saltiness, and the turkey, and the potatoes with the buttermilk, and just that touch of nutmeg in it. And that sauce goes so well with it, it's just wonderful. All right? So I really hope that you enjoy it, have a wonderful time. Don't forget, minimize the risks in things, maximize the flavor, and I'll be back with you next week. God bless. Bye. to Graham Care's Kitchen. It's really 2 programs in 1. This is a series that appeals to your creative side. Food that is sumptuous stuff. How could that be? This is a program about people who want to eat healthy and reduce calories. Actually, it's about food with an aromatic quality that fills the nose. Oh, sure. But it's also about keeping my arteries clean by reducing fat. But it doesn't mean a thing if the food isn't rich and colorful. Maximize the flavor. Okay, but I must have healthy food that I can cook in minutes. I must minimize the risk. So welcome to Graham Care's Kitchen, where we get our heads together just for you. Well, welcome again. This time, of course, we're going to have another look at those things where we minimize risk for you and at the same time boost the flavor, because you can't do the one without the other. If you take risk out of something and don't fix it up, what it is, it's dull and terminally bad news. So that's what we're trying to do. I'll do a little simple thing first and then just expand it a little bit for you. What we call springboarding, so that you can actually see the things that I do and think, neat idea. I can bounce on that idea of his and do my own thing. That's what I'd really love to happen, if you would. All right, first things then, let's have a look at this. Creamy toppings. Now, almost everywhere that you go, I mean, you could have a slice of pie, or you could have, let's say, a muffin like this. Almost everywhere, say, look, here's a typical one here. What's that? I knew. Potato, of course. What you do, you wind up, you put things, you say, somebody comes say, do you want it a la mode or with whipped cream? Yeah, well, fine, yes, of course. And how about on your muffin in the morning? A good spread, perhaps. And what about in the potato in its jacket? Why not just put it? Do you know, it's amazing wherever you go, there's a little bit more. Do you know that this could add up to 200 calories? And this one could add up to 85 calories? And this one, 95 calories? I mean, just one after another. So I thought it'd be pretty neat if I could actually get together with you and show you some of the ways of touching each one of these elements, but with less fat in it. Would that be all right? Okay, come, I'll show you how it's done. Well, it all has one basic root cause to the whole thing, or, you know, foundation to the whole thing. And that is something which is now called yogurt cheese or fresh cheese. I don't know if you've heard of that. But what it is you nick out to the store and you get a yogurt and you read the label and it has absolutely no fat in it at all. It's not low fat, it's no fat. And it has no gelatin or anything else to be able to secure it and make it look, bouncy and firm. Now, this has got to actually come apart in the process of straining. So what you do is you get a little strainer like this one. So it's got a very fine gauze in it, and it's held together quite firmly so that it can go through a dishwasher. And just put it over the top of a jug or some bowl, or even back in here if you want to. And then just take this is perfectly plain. It has no flavor in it, therefore no sugar in it, just completely plain yogurt. And just fill that up. Now, this particular strainer will take a full cup. In fact, if I just keep on doing that, I can actually get just about 2 cups out of it. Now, what happens when it strains, and you should just about be able to see it start now. You see how it's weeping here? You get 50% of the volume of that will be lost. Will go down into the bottom, and what's in the bottom is called whey, W-H-E-Y, and it's a sort of greeny kind of liquid, and it's got protein in it, so you could use it in a bean dish or something like that, and it doesn't taste that great, but it doesn't taste that bad either, but anyway. But in the top, I'll show you what it looks like in a moment it's done. Now, if you don't have one of those things, and you're saying to yourself, well, I don't have one of those things, by the way, put a lid on the top of it always to make sure that nothing odd drips into the top of it. You could get one of these, which is just an ordinary strainer, plastic one will do, and just one sheet of kitchen, I never know quite what to call that, absorbent paper, you know what I mean, it's just sort of picker-upper stuff. And just drop the rest of that, just put it into there, it'll work just as well, and it will drain out. Now put a plate over the top. All right, stick it in the fridge, all right? And when you stuck it in the fridge, it will be there for about 5 hours. Now, I've actually left it in the fridge, gosh, how long have I left it? I don't know. I mean, I must have left it in 10, 12, 15 hours. It's not that it suddenly spoils or goes wrong at all. All right. So, bearing that in mind, that we're going to get that, I'll show you what it looks like when it's strained in just a sec. Now, here, when I'm doing a dessert topping, say for a piece of pie, then what I love to do is take some fresh fruit that's in season at the time, at the present moment. Raspberries, and if they're not in season, then like these, then you can actually get frozen ones. And in the same sort of little stainless steel, so that you can put some weight behind it. Some of the little strainers, if you really pushed on it, you'd go straight through the bottom. So just make sure, if you're ever going to buy one of these things, that you can press on it hard. So you press on it until there's only seed left behind, and I want about 1/4 cup of pulp underneath. Now, I do that with apricots, any other kind of fruit that you really like. But this is nice because it's got nice tart. It's good color, too. So then I take just a product, one of those, just 1 cupful of the strained yogurt, and just drop that down into the raspberry puree. And it's that thick. You remember how it looked before? Twice as thick as that. Could be even thicker. And here, in this little shot glass, there is the most wonderful honey. Now, I love this stuff. It's fireweed honey. And if you've ever gone along, if you've ever taken a railway trip out west or Midwest, and alongside the banks in the summer, you'll see the fireweed. They're about 3 to 5 feet high, pink, they start about here and they sort of go up to about this high. And they're wonderful foraging ground for bees. And they get in there and they love it. And it's usually where there's been a fire. That's why it's called fireweed. And it's in groves of them, and the bees get in there, and it's fabulous taste. I really enjoy it. So there we go. You stir that together, and it's a liquid. It's like a heavy cream, all right? It makes a good dunking cream, really. So just pour that out into a little cup, and then serve that on the side. So that's the first one. It tastes great. I'm going to taste it a little later on. Okay. Now, next one. Next one is an intriguing thing because this is with fresh herbs. And so what I've got here is the actual stalk of chive, which of course is all stalk, and also the stalk of parsley. You see how that is? Not the top of parsley, but the stalks, well washed and cleaned, and then chopped up, and they have the most magnificent texture to them. All right? So those are the 2 textures of the 2 herbs. And then, same amount, 1 cup, that you've strained off. And this keeps quite well in the fridge. Now, it's about 1/8 of a teaspoonful of black pepper in there. And just a short slurp of, what's that, Graham? Teaspoonful of maple syrup. Maple syrup, if, this yogurt has bright points like that. It got like this to the flavor. And when you get maple syrup, it rounds off that little sharp bit. It doesn't taste sweet, but it's a wonderful idea. Okay, that's enough. Then, just put the herbs in, of course. The 2 herbs, crisp green, and then mix that together. Now, if you've had a baked potato in its jacket, and somebody comes, sour cream, bacon chips, and all the rest of the bit, just forget the bacon and just think of this as a potato dish. So you take a potato and just make a little cross on the top of that. If you like, and it's hot, you can wrap it around with a cloth like this and bring it straight out of the oven and then press it around the outside. And it opens that up in the top, and it makes it the most wonderful thing to eat, actually, because it's ready for the topping. So the topping goes on there. Can you imagine what that's like? And there's no fat in that whatsoever. Remember? Non-fat. Okay, put a muffin into a toaster. There we are. Get it nice and hot. Let's put that on one side over there. All right. I can't remember which ones it goes on, but it's all right. That's the herb one. Now, this one is just an absolute knockout. If you take garlic and you just simply cut the garlic off, the shoulders of garlic, like that, you've got this opened wide. Now, you can use the same bits so you don't waste anything. And then wrap that up, put it in an oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 190 degrees centigrade. Just whack it on and ho! Good. And it's somewhat hot. And just unwrap it. And look, this gorgeous piece of garlic is just lying there waiting to be used. Just press it down hard like that, and look what happens. It squeezes out into this fine pulp. Look. And that does not, I know, I can almost hear intake of breath. Come on, Graham, you're joking. I'm going to smell from here to kingdom come. Not at all. This has the most incredibly light texture to it and taste. So you just take that, which is about 2 tablespoons full of garlic pulp, and just whack that into, there we go, into the top. And another little spoon. I've got spoons all over the place here. And some freshly ground pepper as well. And do you know, here's where I'd like you to experiment. You see, I've got a whole bunch of fresh herbs here. I've got marjoram and thyme and all that sort of stuff. Well, here I've got just a little bit of thyme and just a little bit of marjoram. Just a bit. Now, please do it just the way that you want to do that. All right? Just your way of doing it. So just stir that up together, and please yourself, please do something that you really like the sound of. And then just shoot that into the top. Now this would be, I would say, with French bread. All right? Instead of butter at the table or rolls or something like that, remember, always no fat whatsoever. Terrific stuff. All right, so we've got this one. I've got this and that one. And now, up here, come on. I know, don't ever poke a knife into one of these things. That's entirely right. Now, I just want to show you what happens to this. Here is just a little bit of the absolutely plain yogurt put into a little tub, and I put this on my table for breakfast in the morning. I smooth it out, and then another spoon, just a little drop of marmalade on the top, and that's English Seville marmalade, and smooth that out. I cannot adequately describe to you how much I enjoy that when it's done. It's wonderful. A little bit of the garlic one, I want to put that on here so as to be able to taste it. And a little bit of the strawberry bit too. I want to taste each one with you. All right, okay. So there's the muffins. Here's the rest of the mix. Have I got something that's missing, Graham? Yes, of course I have. It's that one. Fine. Presentation is everything. So I knew I'd have a good go at this one. There we are. I promised that there would be things for you for toppings, for pies and muffins and potato. And so we've done it all. Let's have a look and see the sweet one here that we've got and see what we turned up with. The sweet one, this little pink one here, that instead of 217 calories is 89. The fat is 0. Okay, remember that? 0 saturated fat. 4% of that topping, therefore on a piece of pie, is fat. And only 1 milligram of cholesterol, 36 of sodium, and 3 dietary fibers. So that's terrific stuff. Now, here is the one which is the savory one, all right? That's the one with all the fresh herbs in it. And the same one for the garlic. Instead of 89 with the sour cream topping, you'd have 31. 0 again fat, 0 saturated fat. Isn't this fun? 3%, only 3% calories from fat. Cholesterol 1, 36 milligrams of sodium, and dietary fiber 0. Okie doke. Now, quick bite. Every morning, the best time of my whole day is that combination. It's just superb. The raspberry is good. And now this, which shouldn't be following the raspberry. Oh, that's such a good idea. All right? Now, Just think of that. That really works well. And don't forget to springboard your idea, okay? Now, my springboard on this one is going to be a pear dish. It's a dessert. So we'll look at the famous pear Belle Helene and then see what we can do to create a pear fondue. Dipping in some of this. All right. I'll show you how it's done. Good. Well, that is such a lovely taste. It's fresh, you know. And after a while, I mean, you will probably miss the butter in the beginning, but after a while, it's amazing how you get adjusted to it and how you enjoy it. Look, several years ago, Trina and I, this is a very green pear, by the way. This is a Bartlett pear, and it's a cooking pear, so if that sort of makes any difference, and it should be a cooking pear. It doesn't need to be one of those very ripe commis pears. So several years ago, Trina and I went to the Eliocabola out of Rome. It's at a little place called Frascati, which is well known for its wines, and it's up in one of the mountains, sort of looking back over Rome. Gorgeous spot. And we had a pear peeled for us by the most charming, aren't they charming, Italian waiter. And he did all of this with a silver, about 400-year-old silver knife and a little fork at the end. And he just kept on talking to us and said, well, signor, you see, and it was so good. And there was the sun was out, and the sort of La Dolce Vita people hang around, and there was a marble swimming pool. I mean, the whole thing was marble, and busts of Caesar, which looked as if they were real. I mean, not real people, but I mean, you know, real old busts. So anyway, he peeled it like this. It was very attractive because he didn't touch it with his hands at all, and then just got down there like that, and proceeded to take all the pits out. And I didn't think of it at the time because I was sort of so overwhelmed by the dexterity of the whole thing. It was about twice as dexterous as this, maybe 4 times. But it occurred to me now, isn't there a lot of trim in a piece of fruit like this? And wouldn't it be great if you could actually do something with it? So I got to thinking about that, and I thought, well, here, how about this idea? I'll put the over there. This is all the trim from just one pear. But if I just put that with another 3 pears, I've got a lot of trim. So, and it's got lots of flavor in it. It's got bags of flavor in it. So I thought, well, I put some cloves in it, because I love the flavor of cloves with pear, and then some cinnamon as well, and maybe half a cup of brown sugar, just to be able to sort of get some sweetness into it. So, why don't we just do that? Shove all of, no, not those. I would have cooked those later. Nearly tricked myself. There, all the peel went into the top, and then a piece, you know, the cinnamon and the cloves, and then the brown sugar. All right. And then 2.5 cups. Come on, Charlie. Good. This is in order to save wasting water. 2.5 quarts of water, just about, all right? And put it on the heat and just turn the heat up and simmer it then. Right, so you simmer it to extract the flavor from it. So when you're actually finished, it looks as tired as that does. Now that is extracted. I mean, there's just nothing left in that at all. But what is left behind is spicy. Now then I simply raised the heat underneath this and boiled that down until it became just one cup of shining innocence like this. Now that is, if you roll it around, it almost leaves like liqueur, sort of kind of bathing on the side of the dish. It's just gorgeous. The smell of it is slightly spiced, but the perfume of the pear is just great. All right. So then you see, after you've done that, before you boil it down, you put the pears in there. Do you understand that? I mean, I got ahead of myself. But you put the pears in, and then you cook the pears for half an hour. Right? Then you reduce the stock by half. Now, because the pear juice is in there as well as the trimming, I mean, you've got it absolutely. So that's when it looks like that. Right. So you've got 1 cup, and just pour it into a small saucepan and raise the heat underneath it so as to get it nicely, beautifully, wonderfully hot. And I've got a tablespoonful of arrowroot. I think you know me by now. I love to use pure starch and things. And about 2 tablespoonsful of water. And that just rustled together makes the perfect glaze. Now, you could use cornstarch, but if you did that, what you'd have was this cloudiness which comes over the top. I don't want to get cloudiness. So that's done. All right. Now, after it's been in there, after these things have been simmering away for just half an hour, they come out, and I'm going to put it on this plate because I saw it earlier on in that plate. Look at that. There are some beautiful things in this world, and you may be sitting at home and saying to yourself, really, Graham, you're waxing too eloquent about this one, but I cannot wax over eloquent about this one. This is gorgeous. That has just a vaguest little spice in it like that. I can put a knife blade in, it sinks into it, and it's perfect. Right? Now, what I want to do is I want to create a fondue. Remember the old thing that you have in the garage which you haven't used for years? And you can get it out so that you poke a stick in something and then dip it somewhere? Well, I'm going to dip it into that yogurt that I made with the fresh raspberries, the frozen raspberries in there, and thought to myself, if I dip that into that raspberry, what a combination. All right. So I cut all of those up, looks like this. This is just coming to the boil now. So take this arrowroot, move it to the side, never over the heat, stir it in, and then the moment you've stirred it in, you can get it back on the heat again, just to be able to clear and come to the top. Okay, let's get the one in the fridge whilst that's happening. They look so wonderful. Look at that glaze over the top. Everything glistens and it looks perfect. So, and about this stage, it takes that amount of time to be able to thicken up and to be perfectly ready. Now, I took these pears and then dropped this glaze on the top of them. Look at the glaze. Look at the glaze. And there, you can serve it hot if you like, but I really would prefer that went into the fridge and got cold, just like these that have just come out. All right, and then a spoonful onto the plate, and because I was looking for something that was absolutely elegant, without any question of doubt, very simple indeed, leave it like that. And then put this onto the side, and then I'll show you how this actually eats together. Right? Turn the heat off, save money. Come through and I'll show you how it compares actually with the classic dish of all times, perhaps the pear belle Helene. But first of all, here, you would lay the little fondue fork on the side with this, and then put this dunking liquid there, have your party guests all the way around it, perhaps make double the quantity, and then you'd be into it. Now, this is the pear belle Helene, which is just hot chocolate sauce, ice cream, whipped cream, and poached pears on the top. Down. All right. Now, let me show you the difference, if you'd like to see that there's a real difference here. Okay, 708 calories drops down to 224. And then fat, 25 grams of fat here, 1 gram of fat. Now, this is for dessert time, you guys. Saturated fat, absolutely 0. That means the percentage of the calories that actually come from fat, whereas 32 here, are only 4% in this dish, which is fun. Cholesterol, which used to be 59, it's not too bad really, is down to only 1, which is good, of course. Sodium is just 54, so no real problem there. Dietary fiber is up to 6, which is excellent. I couldn't think of a more intriguing way of having a dinner party that for friends that I loved, that I wanted to look after, and who would actually leave my home and go away and say to each other, not, we're going to have to run 3,000 miles to get that dinner off, but to think, wasn't that a wonderful dinner? And let's try that fondue, because it was such a good idea. I'm just trying to imagine the kind of food that I would serve first. The tartness, the flavor of the yogurt is just coming through, but the raspberry just peeks over the top of the yogurt and